Hello, everyone. This is another Freedom to Feel conversation, and my guest today is Carolyn Hidalgo. She is a certified coactive professional coach through the Coaches Training Institute, and she specializes in helping people overcome any challenge by focusing on their spiritual health, which leads to the growth of the soul. I mean, I love that when I read this in your bio. She's a soul coach, a relationship consultant. And Carolyn is also currently writing her first book, Overcoming Judgment, How Allowing You to Be You Lets Me to Be Me. I mean, that's so sweet. The question that I love asking everyone, Carolyn, for the get go is it never left me that question. How would you introduce yourself? Who is Carolyn in this very moment?
Oh gosh, that's a big one. I feel like I've been in playing in a lot of worlds being on this path, to be honest, and identify myself as the name of what I call my divine essence, which is cosmic and mama put together, like Cosma and Cosma. And because I have three kids, like the mother divine mother is a strong pull for me, and to really this bringing spirituality into the next generation. It feels really important right now in particular. So, in terms of introducing myself, I feel like a really strong calling to bring spirituality as a foundation out there. I have the professional bio in terms of I used to do, corporate work and now I'm over here. um, but I write and I coach and I just feel, really blessed and like I'm being led. Like these signs that come up, and especially for me, the 1111, and discovering this revelation that came out that very few people know about, called the Rancha book that we may mention here. Some of this stuff, it tends to go off into a lot of branches. So, you know, I'm gonna lean on you to keep me.
So, what is to be a soul coach? And I know you also sometimes call the label is a relationship soul coach or soul relationship coach.
Yeah, it keeps changing. Yeah, and lately it's been because I'm married to an executive, and the that dance of being on a path with a partner who is very much in the external corporate world and where I used to work. Um, Executive soul coach is feeling more like the direction I want to go in with leaders, and I feel like a lot of the work I do is planting seeds with other leaders. So but the relationship piece has always been the strong area of focus, as opposed to career and health as a secondary piece, like relationships and the relationship with yourself and with that inner God part of us. Huge. Like that to me is the foundation with the work we all do here with ourselves and each other. Then everything else can kind of go from there. So,
Relationships. So, you mentioned that on your website, how important they are. And a lot of people say that. They say that our relationships are our greatest teachers. And that is so true, isn't it?
oh my goodness. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I've got a son and twin girls, and they've definitely taught me a lot. And
It's so sweet, though. I never had children, but there's something about children, and I also think about nature itself, like the plant world and animals, how um, how they flow with this divine intelligence so much more in an easier way than we do.
we do. We always like looking to them going, okay, nature doesn't rush. And yeah.
So there's
Hmm.
something about unlearning, right, Caroline, when it comes to spiritual
Hmm.
work, almost
Hmm.
like revealing or uncovering what we are. Is that something that you would kind of fit in within the description of spirituality?
Well, absolutely, with the conditioning that we have, right? Like the unlearning, and also just understanding that we're spiritual beings having the human experience. Like that, I didn't know that initially, right? And everyone's got their own story of their path to this way of being, and different things we need to let go of, so absolutely, like that's just I think we all have that work to do. And then when we start to unravel and unlearn and discover all of these amazing ways we can create and amazing ways we can, I say, co-create with that part of us. Uh, it's magical. I mean, it's so incredible. And that's where like the judgment piece had been some of the block, the criticism, because as you step into that part of who you are, that's what shows up in the space. You know, we're honoring ourselves, and then suddenly we're letting go of the expectations, and we're letting go of, you know, what we should do and all of that, right? So, and what's right and wrong, and good and bad, and what that even means, really, because it's so subjective, and there's something higher that we're all trying to reach for. That's universal.
Um, what is your vision when it comes to the idea of living as a spiritual being in the human body? And somebody even said that we are spiritual beings, we're struggling to be humans, right?
I mean, I didn't understand what it meant to be spiritual, and from my experience, the idea that God is within us, like just however we understand that in our own um, path during our own journey, but that when we understand that we have the power to access a part of us that's love and God and is the first source and center, um, everything changes. It's like you can trust in something bigger than yourself, and then you can step in. Then you can really, the possibilities, the potential, all of what we can create of heaven on earth here, despite what is going on out there, is really profound. Um, and when you go back into history and really see that that has been underlying, you know, the world that we live in, despite what it appears to be, that is happening at the same time over our history. It's just we've had a lot of hiccups, a lot of um, like really, really hard, rough times, and even now I'm feeling like we're at a crossroads now with what's going on in the world. So a lot's unraveling, and a lot's coming to the surface. So yeah, that's what for me it means. Yeah. How, so how I understand this is like three dimensions of ourselves. Like we have the the material five sensory experience up to the spiritual, and you know the people who can have those gifts of our psychic abilities, all the clairvoyance and clairaudience and so on. And some are gifted with that from the DNA, and then some of us, you know, can develop it. But the one we can all develop is, and all of them we can actually practice doing, but that one inside of us, or that intuitive, what most people know is their intuition, and to be able to sense it for ourselves in the way that we do. So that there's that material and spiritual piece. There's the love and fear piece too. So that's like our inner work, and you know, what did we grow up with it? We need to, like as you said earlier, let go of, and understand when are we in fear. And the biggest part has been fear and control. Like control has been the part that was like, oh, that was what tied to judgment, and I didn't understand how destructive that part was. Like when we impose control onto other people, we're taking away the free will to think for ourselves. And so that's like a break in the divine law that we were given to think for ourselves, and thoughts become things. So, like, that's a big one, a biggie on the fear and love side of things. And like the unconditional love to allow people the freedom to be who you are, comes into that play. And then the last one is actually heart, like the consciousness, like that we're all energy, and there's the dark and the light. So like on all those three dimensions, um, we're growing and understanding ourselves in these different ways, and we all sense it differently. Like just if you think of listening to a song that you love, of what love means, and one time I was listening to a song and I was like, oh my gosh, if I turn the song about, instead of it being about someone else who's a partner out there, if I make the song about God talking to me, the words, it like the one that came in for me was the first time this happened, it was with Eternal Flame, the song by the Bangles. And I flipped it to be God talking to me. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is a good practice with other songs that resonate with you for love songs, to have the experience of God talking to you, right? Because I think our true soulmate is the God part of us. And then everywhere else, it's like we're trying to access that higher relationship to bring that out to our other relationships. And the higher we go here, the more we have out there. And so it's hard to find all these practices and ways to hear that voice. That's true, our true loving voice, not our inner critic and our inner judge and all the other conditioning that comes in and gets in the way of the truth of who we are spiritually. And it's like trying to join, I heard of it this way, that it's this paradox of having God so far away, because it's like that huge, beyond our imagination understanding. And then there's a little part in us. It's like, and we're trying to get there, so it is like this interesting way we're here, on the planet, and to be able to get closer and closer to that part of us to help lead us in the way that we really do want to go. And we get to choose that, which is great, the free will to choose. So
If it was conditioned, then it can also be unconditioned, right? It's I don't think nature, the natural world, this environment that we are in, gives us problems without solutions. It's fascinating to see that it is always playing both sides. If it is a problem, then there is a solution. Gosh, Carolina, because it's almost like becoming free from belief systems as well, completely empty, where you see the world in a completely new way and you have no really preconceived ideas about anything. I mean, that seems like being reborn in a way.
yeah, that I mean, the idea that you're talking about of being open and letting go of beliefs, when we get into that, we all have our own beliefs, but the way that they can be confining to just what we know at this point in our life, but being open to, am I willing to change what I know at this moment in time, for something new? And judgment tends to get attached to this is the one and only way, you know, and then we push that onto other people. And when we're judging, when I talk about what I've learned over the years is it gets really confusing because we use the word judgment all the time to mean other things like an opinion. It tends to, or a conclusion or an assessment, or, it's like those are different things than if you're judging a person, right? Versus, and criticism is, are you making someone wrong for what they do, is criticism. So it's more of a doing thing. And judging is making someone wrong for who they are, which is a personal position, like character. And the way I have used words to try to help people understand this is like, it's like an energy you're imposing on somebody. With criticism, it's like, am I trying to correct someone as if they're broken and they need my fixing? So correcting, or I'm trying to convince somebody the way it should be. Like the way that I want it, I'm trying to make it so that they are doing what I want them to do. And then it'll come out and feel on the other end as criticism of something that's being done. And then judgment is harder because this is talking about people, and you get into a place where we're making someone wrong from a shaming place. So the one side is guilting somebody and the other one is shaming someone, and shaming is the lowest level of feeling like unworthy, and we don't realize how painful that can be when we're condemning someone from a higher place down to a lower place. And so, like, recognizing it, am I in the energy of contempt for somebody, like disdain for somebody? And I didn't understand these differences before until I was in a place where someone judged me, and then I had this horrible, like, these feelings in me I've never felt before, and it was so painful because I had so much resentment and anger, and I didn't understand that I was judging her. Like, this is what I was doing. And it's these thoughts in my head sounded like, she doesn't deserve this. Like, I had really terrible thoughts. Like, looking back and understanding, it took like months. This wasn't like an overnight experience. But once I got, oh, and okay, I'm going to say, like, I was working with a coach and he was really, like, pushing the boundaries. And he's like, okay. And it felt like a betrayal to me. For the first time, I felt like betrayed by someone who felt like a sister to me. Um, and I didn't realize we had been growing apart. And this coach asked me, not everyone has this experience of being betrayed. And so what did you do to create this experience? And at the time I'm thinking, I didn't create this. You don't get it. Like I'm thinking of all these justifying things, right? Uh, but the moment I got it, like this is where we can't forgive because we get stuck in judgment. Because if we're holding, it's like the dagger that we're throwing at somebody, but it's over our head, or the stone you're throwing at somebody is actually against you. And so I have to understand, like, where am I condemning? And then own, like, what was bothering me was what I value. So I explain to people, like, wherever you're confused about something or wherever we're offended by something, somewhere we're in judgment. Because really, like, if we're taking it personally, um, then we've got our values and they're being stepped on, but we're now blaming the other person for them. But they belong to us to start with. So my value of what a friend is and still is was being stepped on, and so I'm judging her for not being the friend I wanted her to be. So I'm imposing my value onto her, and then once I can clear all that up, then I can make decisions now, like the empowering decisions of it's toxic when you have someone judging, and that's the one place where God doesn't judge us. So when we get that part and we can let that part go, um, then we can be free of that hold, that feeling like somebody's attacked us unfairly and unjustly, and give them the freedom to show up where they are, and this is this difficult part of being on this spiritual journey where there's a gap all the time with like me with other people and where they are, and we're always learning from somebody else and teaching somebody else. But if we do it in a way where it's like you should be at at this level or whatever, that's not going to land very well. Right? So then trying to meet people where they are has always been the struggle with all of this. And so the judgment part really cleared everything up. Like once we practice this way of letting go of needing to be right, then we can just allow everyone just to be where they are on the journey. We don't have to make anyone wrong. But we do need to understand what is the difference between like God in terms of love, like what is loving, but what helped me a lot was understanding these three values of truth, beauty, and goodness. Like what is true for me, what is beautiful for me, and what is good for me is only in your own subjective experience of that. And that's the personal relationship we have with God. And that's how we know. Um, and so we can follow that. And then your outer world will reflect that. And so then you'll know we don't need to judge because we're going to follow that and just allow the world to unfold from that place of a lighter um, what love is and what all of the spiritual fruits of compassion and empathy and understanding and patience and all of that, like when we can really embody those, then we've let go of the need to control, really. So judgment is really controlling and condemning somebody, and to me, that is the place that does break free will. And so that's why it's the most dangerous thing to me to do that with somebody else. To judge them means you're trying to control them and you're condemning them as less than you are, um, which is like the dagger that you're holding against yourself, right? So once you can really not ever be offended by what anyone else is doing and not take it personally, uh, that's the freedom that I think we're all trying to get to, and it's what causes so much conflict in our lives, in the world. Like I really believe that is the cause of wars that go on here, because someone is trying to control, right, and impose something that has taken our freedom away to think for ourselves.
And then when you speak of control, I think about fear. So it's coming
Oh
from.
yeah, fear and control go together, hand in hand.
Yeah.
Those two.
Have you heard about the A Course in Miracles?
Oh, wow. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So, Course in Miracles. Yeah. So, the channeled work, and this is, channeling Jesus's message, really, the ego and all of that. I mean, there's some amazing material out there that we've been given. And I mean, the Marianne Williamson has been one of the biggest teachers on A Course in Miracles. So that was where I had heard the first time that when we're judging, we're throwing a dagger at somebody, and the dagger's over our own head. And it was so powerful. I was like, oh my gosh, like that is so true. Um, Once we get that, and it doesn't mean we can't have a negative opinion about something, because I think when initially I was trying to understand this, I kept hearing just don't have a thought, like don't think good or bad. But I'm like, no, you can think of what's good for you, and you can think of what's bad for you. You just don't need to impose that on other people, because that's going to get you into conflict, and you're taking away their freedom to do that for themselves. And so as long as we can allow our differences, and I think this is the toughest part in our world, that when we have a difference of an opinion, can we be with each other without judging somebody? Can we open up to the possibility that your different way can be right for you? And it doesn't have to be my right decision means that it's wrong if you don't follow it. That's where the control comes in all the time. Like the surrendering that would free us all and open up a door to a lot more ways that we could be in the world and to truly embrace what our differences are. But it doesn't mean like forcing like differences on other people, right? It just means allowing without attacking somebody, right? And there's been a lot of the attacking going on out there, and the divisiveness. It's it's hard to just watch it all sometimes. Like I have to like manage the media that has a lot of this fear and control going on out there. A lot of the times it's because the feeling can feel initially we're offended, right? That's the initial feeling that we get. And then because of that, we tend to push back, like we go into defensiveness. And then now we're fighting. Like the energy now is like attacking and attacking back. So as soon as we feel I'm feeling offended, it's like we have to like pause and get back centered and then go, okay, I'm confused. Like a lot of times, if you go to the place of like, I don't understand this, like there's something I don't understand about how someone is showing up, like why they would think the way they're thinking. Because that's the first, like if you get underneath the feeling offended, there's something that we're not seeing here because this doesn't make sense to us. Like, right. And so then if you went into, I don't understand this and I'm confused about this, we can lean into questioning there, like literally go into like, I don't understand this. So what's the first question that's coming to me about that? And it's like, not a question of attacking, but a question of, oh, can you help me understand where you're coming from? I really don't understand that. Like, and it just dissipates everything because now they are feeling heard even. And sometimes they may be trying to get a reaction out of you, and that's not the reaction that they're going to be expecting, right? So when we really go into that, or humor, sometimes if we can lean into like, whoa, that's like like really different, right? Like, and we can feel that energy of like, and that's not an easier one to get to for feeling offended. But I've watched people do this. I'm like, wow, humor can really work in that space if we practice it. And these are these practices of going into like that is so kind of ridiculous, like how that we go into humor, right? Um, so and then we relax, and then they can relax actually, and sort of drop down the attack that's coming in when you are being judged, you know. Um, but a lot of times, once you see that people are in that space of being judgmental, it is such a toxic energy of imposition that a lot of the work is recognizing that we need to move away from that. Because if we leave ourselves in that position, we're just going to keep getting hammered, really. And there's only so much of a wall you can put up if you're not going, like, we just don't engage. Like, you can't engage with someone who's attacking you, really. It literally is a knife kind of coming at you or a stone being thrown at you. And to be able to stand in your own truth with something even that can offend someone who's judgmental. So it can act like a knife going back the other way when we're not, if we're just saying what we're saying, they'll just attack more. So
So that's very helpful when dealing with a level of judgment that's somehow natural, I guess. But then when it comes from, which I had talked to a lot of psychologists and therapists about narcissistic personality disorders and narcissistic traits. So with those people, it's really difficult. And I think your suggestion is more appropriate to just kind of retrieve and not be around them as much.
yeah, I tend to say just like I'll say, I notice that and acknowledge like what is it you're sort of just observing. Like I notice you're really angry. Like I notice that because then the acknowledgement helps lighten the weight of the attack coming in because they're being seen and heard, and you're not agreeing with them. You're just saying, "Oh, I notice here," and just say whatever you're now acknowledge what you're noticing, and then they feel like, okay, they see me. Um, so that's really all you can do with that.
I guess what we really need is self knowledge, right, Caroline? It goes back to spirituality again. And I know that your journey has been, it's very interesting with the 1111, and we didn't talk about that. I would love to bring into the conversation.
Oh my God. It's the Yeah, I mean the 1111 I think, I think we are all on this journey in a different way on our spiritual journey, and that one for me was an early sign. And I think for me, because I had an accident as a child when I was 6, and I've just noticed over time that a lot of people who've had close to death experiences, something's changed in their whole perception. And with me, it took a while to realize, okay, that's when I had this accident, was unconscious. After sometime after that, I kept seeing 1111, and it was just this sign that I didn't understand what it meant. But then over time, I noticed I was a little different from my family, who's very academic and more scientific, that I would start like asking questions about things they weren't asking. Like if it was like spirits or ghosts or angels, I'd be like, what is that? Like I had this curiosity about it that didn't make sense looking back. And people would tell me, like, why are you like that in the family that you're in? And I didn't, when you don't fit in, you don't feel like um, all of that. So the 1111 didn't show up again until, and this is the unlearning that I had to do some unlearning of what I learned. And once I started letting go of limiting beliefs and all that, the 1111 started coming in again, really loud, like all the time, everywhere. And I was like, what is going on with this 1111 thing? And I literally, when I finally Googled it, because and I really thought, okay, it was to confirm that this just must be some weird coincidence or something. But then down, like all this stuff was like all these people were seeing 1111. I was like, what? What is this thing? So that opened the door to that, and it led me to something called the 1111 Progress Group. And that group is a group of people who were starting to hear from celestial teachers, and the they were teachers that could be understood from, like you mentioned, the Course in Miracles. There was another revelation that came out called the Urantia book in the early 1900s, and it was published in 1955. And I have so many synchronicities with this. Like the people who brought it out were two medical doctors who were married, and my parents are two medical doctors who were married. And then I have this here. This is the symbol of it, of the Urantia book, which is the Trinity, the Paradise Trinity. And I have my dining room table has it in the center, the same symbol, like 20 years before I found this. Like it just felt like there were all these signs of leading me up to this book because it was channeled and it has the cosmology and the history of our planet and like things that helped me understand the whole teachings, the life and teachings of Jesus is in there. So it's kind of like a precursor to the Course in Miracles in a way, right? And yeah, and today now with AI, because it's a sacred text, it's hard to read. Like even for me, like I'm a student of it, and I've met other students who've been students for decades of this book. So they helped me understand pieces of it. Um, but that 1111, now I understand like that there were 1111 of these spiritual beings who are trying to help us here. So they actually, it's so cool. Like when you know who you're talking to on the other side. And you understand there's a whole, we're really supported, but we just don't know how to access them. So that's a whole nother part on spirit communication and how that all works. But that's why I developed this Soul Development Academy, because there's so much information and everyone is, interested on a certain level of, what is their interest with that. Um, but I can tell you that it's really magical because of they're the ones who have given permission to be able to give us the signs of these things in the material. They're semi between our world and the next level, and they actually help with hearing the higher levels. Like they're called midwayers, so they're midway between our material world and the next world, right, closest realm.
Yeah, you talked about spirit and soul. That's funny that you said that, the difference between them, because I often
Hmm.
ask that question here to a lot of people. So
Hmm.
I'd love to hear from you. What is the difference between these two concepts?
When I discovered that we have the Spirit of God within us, the Spirit to me is the spirit of that essence of the higher creator in us. So that's your spirit. And I call it sometimes your cosmic compass. Like if you lean into it's trying to give you the direction, but it's pre-personal, meaning you have the personality and it's the one that you have to be the one guiding and choosing because you have the free will to decide. But it's like that the light. So then the more you connect with it, you'll get the thing you want through this creation because it's the part of the creator that creates. So that's the spirit. And the soul is the part of us that is, it's like I've talked about it two ways. Like a trust fund, when you add valuable things into the trust. So while we're here on the planet, we develop experiences that are true, beautiful, and good. And those ones that are godlike and help our soul to grow go into this, like some people call it the Akashic record, the soul record. It's like a trust fund that accumulates over time, or a container that grows over time. And so as we grow spiritually, our soul, the weight of our soul gets heavier and stronger and fuller. And we are here to grow that part of us as much as we can, because the more you can grow that and become more godlike in our understanding spiritually, we can create more of joy and happiness and peace on earth and all of what's possible here on our short time here. And then when you cross over, you will be with the people where you are in terms of your soul growth. Like your soul growth is sort of like the measure of um, our journey, like, and everyone is different on that journey, like of how we chose to be here on the planet. And that soul growth is like there literally is a measure of of the it's called psychic circles, like the way that you are wherever you are on that journey will help you on your ascension plan, which continues on the other side. So it's really important because it's like there is a map of like our soul here makes a difference when you cross. And so if you're kind of lost and you don't realize that part of our purpose here is to grow our soul, to become more godlike here really, then it's harder. Like there's a more work over there we got to do. So that's a whole other conversation.
My main interest has been always freedom. How can I be free right here now? How can I find that which is the infinite? They say when the student's ready, the teacher appears. So, yeah, how do you feel about this idea of freedom, being free here and now without concepts?
Well, I think when we talk about the infinite nature of spirit and that we live in a material world, there was one message that really resonated. Like, if you imagine you're in a rowboat and we have one oar that's the material world that we live in and one oar that's the spiritual world. If you just focus on the material world, you go in a circle. And if you just focus on the spiritual world, you go in a circle. So you have to row them together. And so trying to balance, yeah, like trying to balance our inner world of spirit with the outer world of the material, to have the freedom that you're talking about. Like we get to play in this environment. Like one of the things that's really interesting from the perspective of celestial teachers is that because we live on such a like a world that has so much diversity on it. Like if you just look around, like our world is so beautiful, planet wise. I mean, just the tree, like nature, every place you go and you when you're traveling, it's like, oh my God, look at this planet. It's got so much to experience here in such a short amount of time. Um, and they sort of envy us because we get to have this body here. I think we don't appreciate it that way with that perspective, um, that we get to experience God here in our own way. Like if we had like the freedom to experience God here in the material world, both ors, um, is the gift we were given, right? And so this is why the freedom to be yourself fully here and choose the thing that works for you. And if you had full out freedom to do that, and you could create it in our world without people imposing or rules to follow, because eventually you start to like when you study all these different texts, you realize, wait, somebody is person decided some rules around this text, and then it branches out again, and it branches out again, and there's a mystical side to every religion, right? So that's to me the personal experience that people are having of these different religions, right? So then it just becomes, wait, we were supposed to have our own personal spiritual experience with all of these, and you get to pick different parts that resonate. They can all work. There are many paths to God. So that's that perennial philosophy that the author of Brave New World, which is a book about we need to get back to nature and all of that, he talks about the perennial philosophy that people had sort of come up with over the years, that there are many paths to God, that there's truth in a lot of different things. And so we get to choose, this one resonates with me for some reason. We're all different. But at the end of the day, we're going up the same mountain, and that freedom that you're looking for is a freedom we all want. So we can't be out in the world controlling how everyone else experiences freedom, like that's taking freedom away. So we can find that way if we focus more inside of ourselves. The more we focus on the inner world to create it the way that are the values that work for you in your life, the more freedom you're going to have. And the more we release, like people who are trying to impose, we won't have that anymore. Sometimes it means moving places, or sometimes it means letting go of relationships. Sometimes it means changing a job. But we can experience it here on a level that's really open and trusting. And when you're around people who allow for that you can totally show up with who you are. That does feel like freedom to have that in your life.
It does. Yeah, that's true. That is so true. And you're right. Sometimes it is like using the free will we have, the little bit of free will to kind of make that decision, right? To choose to be free within first. This is just such a powerful message and necessary
Mm.
for all of us to not just be reminded of, but we need to start practicing that.
I know. I think that's the hardest tweak with like I'm allowed to feel upset about this, and own that because of a value, and then the value is so loud and it doesn't change. Like you're always going to be upset if somebody does that, and there'd be a problem if we weren't upset about that, right? But then if we start attacking other people for it, then we become the thing we don't want to be. Yeah.
And so thank you again.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for finding me and
Yeah,
being able to have
yeah,
this conversation.
yeah. Thank you for
So
saying yes. And so I want to mention the ebook that you have written. The ebook is available. Is that on your website? It's called 11 Vital Soul Practices for Living Judgment Free. Is that, yeah, talk to me about
yeah.
that for a moment because I forgot to mention.
Oh yeah. No, if you want to join my judgment free community, you can just go to my website at carolynhidalgo.com. I just created just a quick, I mean, a lot of people, there's so much out there now, but 11 vital practices on learning how to live this way. Because it really is a practice to, all of the ways that we cannot take things personally, really, and let go of that inner feeling of being attacked when something's not working for us, and it's inevitable. We're living in this world of contrast, so we can visit me there. And I was just going to end with like the serenity prayer is such a that prayer that I'm sure all your guests know. But what I do with it is the question answer. Like if you can turn it around as a practice and ask the question, you know, God, what um, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. So what in my life do I need to accept that I cannot change? And it goes back to control. And so if you ask and wait and get an answer, all of this, all the information will come in. You'll see a lot in your own life of where that is. And then the courage to change the things I can, because a lot of times we need to step into the things that, what can we change? And then the possibilities open bigger if we contemplate on this as a question answer with our fragment of God. And then the place we get all mixed up and get upset is where the wisdom to know the difference. It's like we're trying to control the thing we can't control. And most of the time it's other people. Like we want to change other people and we can't control that. And so we got to let go of that. And then it becomes, how do we let go of that when they're the people that are close to us a lot of the time? Right. And there are ways, but if we don't practice that and really listen in, it's hard to know how to do that. We get caught in that. And then there's more of the weight with us and going, okay, how do I need to show up to become the change here? And it will happen when we let go of control. So it's really, to me, a letting go of control practice, the serenity prayer. Yeah, that one is really powerful.
Yeah, I never heard it that way. And it sounds very simple.
It's so simple, honestly. Yeah, it's so simple. That's one of the most powerful ones are the ones that are so simple and doing it consistently and getting that input, like inspiration and insights when we're asking, because that is that what you said earlier, you knock and the door will open and ask and the answers are there. But we forget to ask a lot of the time.
And that's a beautiful prayer also too. I love, I use the intellect when it comes to prayer meditation exactly that way. So it starts with an idea, concept. It could be a poem, it could be a song, anything. But what I do is I try to contemplate on that enough so it comes to the heart.
It's the divine piece. It really is. Like without that, it's hard to live in a world if you don't have that trust in that, right? Like that there is a benevolent creator, father, universe, however you want to call that, that has a personality. Like it's all personality and it's unified, male and female. And I mean, it's so big, you can't even, I think our little brains can't really imagine it fully. Um, but to know that it's true and then having the experience of it as it plays out in your life, that's when I think I just wanted to get it out, because when you see what's going on in the world and they don't have that, like I don't know how you go through life without having that trust in something bigger. Like you just go straight into despair. And then you're trying to control everything. So this part can work both your, like there's a place for science and intellect and understanding and all of that with this part. Like that's the best part of it. Like you get to use your free will to think for yourself to access this creator, and then boom, it's like, wow, all of the creation that you can create starts to happen. Um, and I think like being able to see these ideas and actually seeing it with my kids and seeing it with the people around me, and seeing all the signs and synchronicities that come in, and that feeling of being guided. I don't know if you get the flashing lights all the time. That's one of the first signs that I had. It's like, yeah, like the lights are and the candles are flickering, and yeah. Well, I mean, there's so many different ones out there. So
You see, there's two ways, isn't it, Carolyn, to navigate this reality. One is to survive, as you may, is coming from fear and controlling everything.
yeah,
And the other one is exactly what you're speaking of, which is surrender.
surrender and trust. Yeah, surrender the control. So I think some people don't understand what they're surrendering, and it's like surrender the need to control and to have certainty. Like people want certainty because it makes them feel safe, but what they don't realize is we don't really want certainty because that's boring, and that's fixed. Yeah, like what we want is to be safe and feel secure like a nest that we can go home to and go fly and come home, right? Like we, if we had certainty, it would be so boring. Like we want an adventure here. So that's an illusion that we need certainty to start with, right? We want to be okay with uncertainty. And that way, the only way you can do that is to be able to have trust in that part of you that you can navigate it no matter what goes on. And that's the hard part because it's invisible half the time, right? Like you can't see it all the time. And then, but if you do lean into it, it does work. Like it, things happen. You can't believe that stuff that happens. Like it doesn't even make sense, all of the synchronicities that go on. Uh, but that's what lifts you. That's what allows you to be in uncertainty when you can't even see it. That's the faith. That's being able to have faith in something you can't see and the trust in that. So that's how you can let go of the control, the surrendering, that hold that we have. It's hard, like for a lot of us, because you're in the fear. Well, most of them, they're using the control to try to get rid of the fear, but it doesn't go away. It's like the only way is to move from fear to faith, and then trust and own your own sovereignty of what you actually can create. Um, and we were given that, like when you were given that from birth, we were given that. Then we don't have to worry about what's going on out there, what everyone else is doing, right? Or worry about what everyone else is thinking. Because then you're like, oh, their thinking has to do with their soul journey, right? Not ours. Like once we pay attention to ours and you let other people have the freedom to have their soul journey, everything moves forward. The collective consciousness expands because now there's more potential instead of fixing it to my way or the highway.
I mean, I could just we this is another topic that would be wonderful to discuss is that
Hmm.
spiritual materialism. A lot of
Oh,
people
yeah.
they choose to have faith in the unknown and all that with the hope that they'll get better physically, they'll get a new house, they'll get things, but they
Yes.
don't understand that what we are is not material, so it's not really interested in becoming anything physical.
Right.
It's
Right.
really that's I mean in
That's another
comparison if
topic.
it's really small,
So
that's just
true. The manifesting piece, when you really understand that it's not like wishful thinking, like it is actually like the more you grow your soul, actually, you're going to get a lot more help because that is why we're here. And they're kind of waiting for you to tap into that part of yourself. And the more you do tap into that, then that's when things start to materialize, right? So without that even deeper thought of your growth that way, and it doesn't have to be tied to any religion or anything. Like it really is just what the spiritual fruits are, that are love, and like where would love go, where would the heart go, all of that starts to open up what's material because when you start getting into nature and how it all works, and that we're part of that, like that's the part that will manifest with new ideas, right? So it's so much bigger than stuff.
it's like almost like I have heard Vedanta. Usually they say that it's almost like being a beggar. Somebody who it's homeless when you're sitting in actually in treasure in a they call like the treasure box, and then you already have everything there. You're sitting on it, but you're still begging for things of the world. Carolyn has been
Yeah.
amazing. This
So
conversation
nice to
with you.
talk to
Thank you
you.
so much for flowing. The way you do, and I mean that's what I call really spirituality. As I said, it's coming from silence. It's a place of knowing. So we don't need
Mm-hmm.
to remember anything, memorize anything. It just
Mm-hmm.
flows naturally. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you so much for being you and
Oh,
for
thank
this
you.
mission, for taking on this beautiful mission. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you for having me. I
And we'll
appreciate
talk
you.
again. We'll be in touch again. Bye for now.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye now.